I'm making this video as a repository or vessel for the initiation of the moral software movement. And basically, I see this in a military context, in the context of a military operation. But then again, I sort of understand activity to be sort of universally pervaded and saturated by such concerns, even drug dealing hippies. Uh, you know, those are probably a couple of sort of negative outlooks on what I'm trying to do. To state it more positively, one could say that it's the creation of art. And what I am proposing is an artistic movement to go along with the moral software movement. And sort of, looking at sort of the fissile or combustible material that's available to me, my attention is drawn to the New Age movement, to analog and digital and virtual analog synthesizers, and such marketing concepts as the vector synthesis, and sort of all of the ideas that the synthesizer industry has cooked up in the last 40 years or so, maybe 50 years. I think the audio synthesizer, and perhaps one could include a video synthesizer in this as well, is I would describe it as fertile ground or an appealing target for the moral software movement and for primary or initial targets of the moral software movement. And the reason for this is that I think the audio synthesizer has the great benefit of being both a superficial and universally, except for the deaf, universally accessible format. So in other words, it serves as an advertising vector, and it's obviously, I suppose, adjacent or even possibly contained within as a common element with the software industry and the music industry. So in other words, the synthesizer, one could say, is a bridge from the computer software world to the music world. Here's an example of the kind of software program I'd like to see. And it's a virtual analog synthesizer that operates by compiling a module specification to C code and then invoking a C compiler such as the Microsoft compiler or the GNU compiler, generating a dynamic load library, a DLL, and then dynamically loading that library into the running program, all within a single execution of the underlying software. So in other words, putting the software toolchain inside a single executable and making use of the efficiency gains of executing machine code as opposed to using a virtual machine to execute bytecode, and therefore accessing what I would describe as, one could argue what the quote-unquote full power of a computer is, but I would say that this is a model that gets you closer to the full power of a computer. So the concept here then is to design such a software synthesizer, a virtual analog synthesizer, according to the principles of the moral software movement, which means that you go to the bookstore and you buy a book, and the book tells you, what to type into the computer. And sort of the thinking here is that this is an inefficient way of interacting with the computer, and I beg to differ. I think this is the major challenge of the moral software movement, is aligning the learning of the students, the users' learning process with the data input for the source code of the computer program. And I think there are all sorts of what I would describe as specification materials that can in fact be translated or transmitted in electronic form, such as the placement of user interface elements, scripts, I would say sort of the logical organization of the program, various materials that are of a high level nature that can be readily inspected and that don't impact the trust the user has in the operation of the computer program. So that is to say, the guts would be the guts of the computer program are transmitted in printed published form, and the cosmetic configuration of the software is transmitted in electronic form. And the crucial difference between the full transmission of the computer program in electronic form and this and restricting the electronic transmission to the configuration is that trust issue. That is, sort of the fulcrum or the point on which this model is based. And getting to that point where the sort of the trust relationship has been taken away from the computer and has been placed on the publisher book buyer or publisher reader relationship, and putting the trust there, I think is the correct approach. And just to say, one could argue people can lie about the content of books. They could claim to be printing one book but have two different plates and actually be printing two different books and giving them to different people. This sorts of mischief it's possible. But in my view, there is one crucial limit or speed bump that impedes that kind of mischief or that kind of deception. And that is the existence of religious text. There's something spooky about writing, because the Bible is a written book that's published. That spookiness, in my view, has the potential to scare people into behaving well and to not go digging at the occult, not go digging up skeletons or ghosts or witches. Not just, people are basically trained to not screw with the printed published page, and exploiting that, I believe, is key.